What if I told you that the version of you watching this right now, the one who's tried the affirmations, the meditations, the visualizations, is still operating from the exact frequency that's keeping you stuck? It's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because no one ever told you that you don't get what you want. You get what you are. That sentence alone, from Neville Goddard, collapses the illusion that wanting is enough. And I know it's uncomfortable because you've been trying. You've been hoping. You've been searching for the next tool that will finally unlock it, that will finally shift the outside so it can match the longing you feel inside. But longing itself is a frequency. Wanting is a vibration, and wanting keeps you wanting. You've probably been told to think positive thoughts, to imagine a better life, to speak what you wish into existence. But if your unconscious vibrational baseline, the state your nervous system has memorized over decades, is still anchored in fear or lack or unworthiness, then all the beautiful words and visions float above you like balloons with no string. They never land. They never become real, because your body is still rehearsing an old identity, one that isn't aligned with the version of you that already has what you seek. 5 minutes a day. That's what I'm asking you to consider. Not 5 minutes to fix yourself. Not 5 minutes to pretend something into existence. But 5 minutes to feel something deeper, to return to a frequency that was always yours, but got buried under the noise. This isn't magic. This is resonance. This is coherence. This is about learning how to become the version of you that your soul remembers, even if your mind has forgotten. Most people use manifestation techniques as a form of escape, not transformation. They try to bypass the now, chase the future, avoid the discomfort. But that avoidance is still energy. And the universe, the quantum field, the intelligence that responds to vibration, doesn't speak English. It speaks frequency. It doesn't hear what you say. It feels what you are. So let me ask you something that may stir something deep inside. What if your current identity is not just familiar, but addicted? Addicted to the exact emotional signatures that sabotage your peace over and over again. Addicted to worry, to proving, to pleasing, to surviving. What if the greatest shift you'll ever make is not about attracting a new life, but releasing the one version of yourself that never believed you were worthy of living it? This isn't about getting more. It's about becoming more aligned, more coherent, more whole. And when that happens, when who you are finally vibrates in harmony with what you've always desired, life stops being a chase. It starts being a reflection. And all it takes is 5 minutes a day. There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that comes from doing everything right and still feeling like nothing changes. You wake up, meditate, try to feel grateful, visualize the life you want, and yet, by noon, you're already drowning in the same emotional patterns. Frustration, doubt, that subtle, almost invisible fear that maybe you're just not meant for more. But what if I told you it's not your fault? What if I told you that your body, your nervous system, is still addicted to the emotional chemistry of lack? It sounds harsh, I know, but the truth is, the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Years of living in survival mode, worrying about money, craving approval, fearing rejection, these don't just vanish because you lit a candle or said an affirmation. They imprint, they become familiar, they become safe, even when they hurt. And so, while your conscious mind says, I want peace, your unconscious biology whispers, but chaos is what I know. This is the vibrational trap. The body becomes addicted to the frequency of the past, and it calls it home. You want abundance, but your cells are still rehearsing scarcity. You want love, but your heart still pulses in rhythm with abandonment. You want freedom, but your breath still tightens around old stories of failure. And so, without realizing it, you continue to manifest from a place of lack, not because you want to, but because your energetic blueprint hasn't been updated. Energy doesn't lie. The field doesn't respond to words. It responds to frequency. And that frequency is set by what feels emotionally safe to you, not what feels good, what feels familiar. That's why the law of attraction, when misunderstood, becomes frustrating. It doesn't respond to what you desire, it responds to what you are emotionally calibrated to receive. And if your emotional baseline still vibrates in fear, the universe will echo that back to you, not as punishment, but as reflection. This is not about blame. This is about awareness. Awareness that the loop you're stuck in isn't just mental, it's vibrational. And the most profound work you'll ever do is not to fight that loop, but to gently shift it, to feel your way out, to become someone whose nervous system recognizes peace, joy, and worthiness as safe. Only then will your outer reality begin to reflect the frequency of who you've truly become. You've been told to visualize, to see the dream, to imagine the outcome, to picture every detail as if it were already here. And maybe you've done it. You've closed your eyes, breathed deeply, and tried to see that new life unfold before you. But something still feels flat, like watching a movie on mute, like standing outside a window, looking in, but never stepping through. That's because most people visualize as spectators, not participants. They imagine from the outside distant, hopeful longing. But the subconscious doesn't respond to images. It responds to experience. It responds to the fusion of thought and emotion, to coherence, to felt reality. And if the image in your mind is not accompanied by a shift in your emotional state, it will never register as truth to your nervous system. It will never become familiar enough to feel real. Neuroscience has shown us this over and over. The brain doesn't change because you saw something. It changes because you felt something. Emotion is the glue that binds new circuits. When you imagine a new life, but do so with the same emotions of doubt, fear, or indifference, you are rehearsing the old life, not creating a new one. You are reinforcing separation, not embodiment. Neville Goddard spoke of living in the end, not dreaming about the end, not hoping for the end, but living in it as if it were already done. Why? Because the universe doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your identity. And identity is a vibrational posture. It's who you become emotionally, physically, energetically long before the evidence arrives. So ask yourself gently, are you visualizing from the identity that already has it, or from the one that still aches for it? The difference is everything. Because when your heart and mind speak the same language, when your image is matched with true emotional resonance, your frequency shifts. And when your frequency shifts, reality follows. Not because you forced it, but because you became someone new. There is a quiet tension that lives beneath the surface of wanting, a pressure that whispers, if I try harder, maybe it will come. So you do more. You meditate longer. You repeat affirmations. You visualize with more intensity. And yet, the more effort you pour in, the more resistance you feel. Like chasing your own shadow. Like gripping water in your hands, the tighter you hold, the more it slips away. This is the paradox of effort. In the quantum field, desire charged with fear becomes resistance. Hope laced with desperation becomes blockage. It's not that your intentions are wrong. It's that the energy behind them is incoherent. You're asking for expansion while vibrating in contraction. You're reaching for a higher timeline while emotionally rooted in survival. And this resistance has a texture. It feels like striving, like restlessness, like that subtle fear that if you stop trying even for a moment, everything will fall apart. But that fear is the very frequency you're broadcasting into the field. Not the words you say, but the energy behind them. The field doesn't listen to your voice. It listens to your vibration. Imagine driving a car with one foot on the gas and one on the brake. That's what it's like to try to manifest while doubting, to move forward while holding on to fear. The engine revs, the wheels spin, but you go nowhere because the effort is not aligned. It's fragmented, and fragmentation cannot create coherence. The shift comes when you stop performing and start embodying. When you stop begging life to change and begin becoming the version of you that no longer needs to plead. This is not passivity. This is surrender. Not giving up, but letting go. Trusting that becoming is louder than trying. That alignment is stronger than force. And that frequency, not effort, is the true architect of reality. There is something sacred about repetition, something ancient and intelligent in the act of returning again and again to a state you wish to remember. 5 minutes a day may seem small, insignificant, but when done with emotional presence, 5 minutes can become a doorway, not to the future, but to a deeper version of you that already exists in the quantum field, waiting to be claimed. Imagine this, You close your eyes and enter a scene, not one you watch from afar, but one you inhabit. You feel it. You smell the air, hear the sounds, touch the textures. You're not hoping for it. You're being it. You're not watching your future self. You are your future self. For 5 minutes, you let your body believe it already happened, and something remarkable begins to unfold. Your nervous system starts to adapt. Your biology begins to update. Your energy starts to align. Neville Goddard called it a short scene, which implies the fulfillment of the desire, not the full story. Just enough to saturate the senses, enough to create what Joe Dispenza calls a future memory, one the body can refer back to, as if it were real. And the more you return to this state, especially in the moments between waking and sleep, when the brain slips into theta, the more it becomes familiar, safe, natural. You don't need to force belief. You only need to feel alignment. The body is always listening, and when you rehearse the state daily, not with desperation, but with reverence, something soft but powerful begins to change. The field around you shifts, not because you pushed, but because you tuned yourself to the frequency of what was already true, of what was already yours. It's not about pretending, it's about remembering, not about asking for something new, but allowing yourself to become someone who no longer doubts it. And in that becoming, in those 5 quiet minutes of coherence, the world outside you begins to respond to the new signal you're sending. Gently, precisely, unmistakably. There's a strange kind of gravity in the familiar, even when it hurts, even when it limits you. Your thoughts, your reactions, your habits, they loop like music you didn't choose, playing quietly beneath your awareness. And even as you reach for something new, you feel yourself pulled back into old emotions, old beliefs, old stories, not because you want to, but because your identity is still tethered to who you were. This is the identity lock, the invisible bond between your nervous system and the past version of yourself, the version that was shaped by repetition, by trauma, by survival. And while your mind might crave transformation, your biology craves safety. Safety in what it already knows, even if what it knows keeps you small. Neuroplasticity doesn't only work in your favor. The same mechanism that allows you to change also reinforces what you repeat. And if your environment, your language, your habits, even the way you walk through your day, all echo the frequency of the old self, then that self will continue to run the show. It will continue to vibrate into the field, attracting not what you desire, but what you've unconsciously rehearsed. The lock isn't broken by force. It's softened by awareness, by gently disrupting the automatic, by becoming conscious of the unconscious patterns that bring you back to the same thoughts, the same emotional signatures, the same vibrational identity. And then, with presence, you begin to choose differently. You breathe differently. You speak with more intention. You respond instead of react. Small shifts, yes, but deeply powerful, because each one is a vote for a new identity. The new version of you isn't waiting in the future. It's waiting in the choices you make today, not dramatic, not loud, but vibrationally clear. With each micro-action, you anchor the frequency of who you are becoming. And over time, the old self grows quieter, not gone, but no longer in control. You don't erase your past. You simply stop being defined by it. And in that freedom, something sacred awakens, a self that no longer remembers itself through pain, but through presence, through alignment, through the quiet, steady resonance of truth. Anxiety is often misunderstood. It's not just noise, not just tension. It's energy, raw, potent energy searching for a direction. It rises in the chest, coils in the stomach, tightens the breath. But beneath its discomfort lies something sacred, the possibility of transformation. Because anxiety, when held with awareness, can become the very fuel that reshapes your vibration, not through suppression, but through alchemy. Emotional alchemy begins with permission. Permission to feel, not to fix, to allow the waves to come, without drowning in them, to witness the sensation without labeling it wrong. When you meet anxiety with curiosity instead of resistance, its edges soften. It starts to reveal its root, often a longing for safety, for clarity, for connection. And when you breathe into that space, something shifts. The emotion loses its grip. the energy begins to move. What was once tight becomes spacious. What was once chaotic becomes fertile. Fertile for intention, for new vision, for magnetic clarity. Because intention born from stillness is powerful, but intention born from transmuted emotion, that is electric, that is coherent, that vibrates with the full truth of who you are, not just who you wish to be. Imagine your fear not as a wall, but as a well, a deep reservoir of potential, waiting to be redirected. It is not here to block you. It is here to ask, what would you create if you weren't busy running from this feeling? What would you see if you weren't bracing against the noise? That question doesn't demand an answer. It invites a new posture, one of listening, one of presence, one of inner leadership. Because your fear is just energy looking for a higher frequency to express itself. And when you become the vessel calm, grounded, intentional, that energy begins to serve you. It stops hijacking your thoughts and starts amplifying your clarity. It stops circling in anxiety and starts radiating as intention. This is not escape. This is embodiment. This is how you take the raw data of your nervous system and sculpt it into something aligned, something magnetic, something true. In the silence between your rituals, there is a restlessness, a subtle urge to check, to scroll, to move on to the next thing. You set an intention in the morning, but by afternoon, you're lost in notifications, unfinished thoughts, and the hunger for something new. This is not a failure of will. It is the chemistry of the mind, specifically, the pull of dopamine, the molecule of more, the whisper that what you have, what you are, is never quite enough. Dopamine is not your enemy. It is part of your design, but in a world of constant stimulation, becomes a trap. It trains your nervous system to seek reward, not resonance, to chase the peak, not embody the practice. And so, even your spiritual work begins to mirror this hunger. You jump from one teacher to another, one method to the next, always seeking the next spark, but never staying long enough to let it root. This is the sabotage, not loud, not obvious, but insidious. You begin the day in coherence, and by evening, you're fragmented. Not because you didn't care, but because your brain, conditioned by speed and noise, CRAV's novelty over depth, CRAV's stimulation over stillness, CRAV's quick over real. But transformation doesn't happen in the peaks. It happens in the steady, often quiet repetition of aligned choices. 5 minutes, when fully inhabited, can be more powerful than an hour of distracted ritual. Not because of what you do, but because of how you feel while doing it. Coherence is not built in grand gestures. It's built in micro moments. Moments where you choose presence over performance, stillness over scrolling, intention over impulse. And when you begin to anchor your day in these small but potent acts of return to breath, to feeling, to awareness, something shifts. The dopamine loop loosens, the noise fades, and what remains is something deeper, a frequency not shaped by external reward, but by internal truth, a momentum that is not reactive, but resilient, not chasing, but creating. And from that place, your practice is no longer something you do. It becomes who you are. Your beliefs are not stored in your mind. They are etched into your biology. Every thought you've repeated, every emotion you've recycled, every story you've rehearsed, they live not just in memory, but in muscle, in the way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you respond to life. This is what Bruce Lipton meant when he said your beliefs are printed in your cells. You don't just think them, you become them. But the miracle is this: biology is not destiny. Identity is not fixed. Frequency is not permanent. And 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes of emotional coherence, of intentional feeling, of embodied vision can begin to rewrite the code. Not through force, not through perfection, but through presence, through the sacred act of showing up to your own vibration and choosing something new. When Neville Goddard said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled," he wasn't offering poetry. He was describing biology. He was giving you the formula for energetic transformation. Feel it now, not because it's here, but because it can be. Not to trick the universe, but to align with it. Not to demand a future, but to remember who you already are beneath the layers of survival. Because this work is not about attracting things. It's about returning to self. returning to the version of you that doesn't beg life for permission, but vibrates as though it already belongs. And in that vibration, calm, clear, consistent, the field responds. Reality shifts, not as a prize, but as a mirror. So let this truth land gently. You are not the radio searching for a signal. You are the tuning fork. You don't find the frequency, you become it. And when you do, the world around you cannot help but resonate. It cannot help but adjust. Because energy is loyal to coherence. And when you vibrate from truth, truth begins to shape your life. If this message resonated with your frequency, if something in you stirred, stayed, softened, then let the field know. Not because you need it to change anything, but because you're ready to anchor a higher timeline, ready to live from the inside out, ready to remember